On February 17, 2023, in Hexham, England, mourners gathered for the funeral of 15-year-old Holly Newton, who was described as a popular girl who was loved by so many people. Hundreds of people joined a procession towards Hexham Abbey to pay tribute to the helpful and kind teenager who was attacked in the quiet country town on January 27. Speaking to mourners at her service, Holly's mother, Michaela Trussler, said of her shy daughter, who loved to perform for others, "Some people are just too good for this world, and Holly was one of them." Holly's white coffin was pulled along the high street by 4 black horses wearing purple jackets, her favorite color, while the top of the coffin was also adorned with purple flowers and messages of condolence. One read, "Sleep tight, beautiful Holly in the sky until we meet again. Love you forever." So today we are going to look at events that took place in the year 2023 in England. Holly Newton was just 15 years old when her story hit the headlines and television news. While investigating what happened to her, detectives got hold of chilling CCTV footage that captured the last minutes of Holly's life. A verdict in the case was handed down earlier this month. Holly Newton was known as a bright and caring individual with a promising future. Holly was described by her family and friends as a thoughtful and compassionate young lady who was a positive influence on those around her. Known for her outgoing personality, Holly loved spending time with friends and participating in social activities. Her friendly demeanor allowed her to easily find common ground with others. Holly was a quiet girl who loved dancing and had a strong sense of right and wrong, her mother said. Holly Newton and Logan MacPhail met through their involvement in Army Cadets, a youth organization that provides military training and activities for young people. This environment often brings together people with common interests in discipline, teamwork, and outdoor activities, which likely contributed to their initial connection. Their relationship began as a typical teenage romance. They spent time together with common interests and social circles. However, as their relationship progressed, it became increasingly problematic due to Logan's controlling behavior. This control manifested itself in a variety of ways, including his insistence on knowing Holly's whereabouts at all times and his interference with her social media accounts. He reportedly changed her passwords to limit her interactions with others, a classic sign of controlling behavior where one partner seeks to dominate the other. Friends and family have noticed Holly becoming increasingly isolated. Despite these red flags, Holly initially remained in a relationship with Logan, which is not uncommon among teens who may not fully recognize or understand the signs of an unhealthy relationship. Holly's mother, Michaela Trussler, said Logan MacPhail was Holly's first and only boyfriend, and that it was a typical teenage relationship with ups and downs. Logan spent weekends with Holly's family. Holly's mother and stepfather had no idea that Logan was playing the role of the good guy when he came to their house. However, problems in Holly and Logan's relationship grew like a snowball. Eventually, Holly decided to end the relationship due to Logan's increasingly obsessive behavior. The breakup did not sit well with him. He had a hard time accepting it and became even more fixated on her. Michaela Trussler said it was clear her caring and thoughtful daughter had been more mature than MacPhail, but when she had tried to break up with him, he had used emotional blackmail and scared Holly. "I was not aware of the sheer scale of turmoil Holly was going through at the time," she said, adding MacPhail had been obsessed with Holly and thought if he couldn't have her, no one else could. She also said red flags about his controlling behavior were not recognized until it was too late, and she had not realized the emotional turmoil Holly was being put through when trying to break up with MacPhail. MacPhail's reaction to the breakup was extreme. He began following Holly around town and continued to try to control her life even after she made clear her desire to move on. MacPhail turned up uninvited outside her house in Haltwhistle on the night of the 26th of January and had to be taken back to his home in Birtley by police. Holly and her parents were actually due to meet police to discuss their fears about MacPhail, but there was a tragic twist of fate. After MacPhail turned up at their home in Haltwhistle uninvited and demanding to speak to Holly on the night of the 26th of January, Holly's mother, Michaela Trussler, contacted Northumbria police. A meeting was scheduled for about 4 p.m. on the 27th of January, but Holly begged for it to be pushed back so she could go out with her friends after school instead. The meeting with the police was rescheduled for the evening, but a few hours before it was to take place, something terrible happened to Holly. The chronology of events that took place the day after MacPhail showed up uninvited outside Holly's house was reconstructed using CCTV. He couldn't accept that Holly had ended their relationship. The following day, with a kitchen knife in his backpack, he left his school in Gateshead early and got the bus to Hexham, where he waited for Holly to head into town. Dressed all in black with a black face mask and baseball cap concealing his identity, MacPhail followed Holly and her friends as they visited a leisure center and shops for about 45 minutes. He also made repeated contact with those close to Holly through voice messages in a bid to convince her to meet up with him face to face. As Holly and the boy visited a takeaway on the town's high street, he then approached her and asked if she would talk with him in a nearby alleyway. After following him, MacPhail then launched a violent attack on Holly, stabbing her multiple times. When her friend heard Holly cry out, he left the shop and intervened, before he was also stabbed in the shoulder and leg. Shortly after 5:10 p.m. on Friday, January 27, 2023, police were called to reports that a boy and girl had been seriously assaulted in the Priest Popple area of the town center. Emergency services attended and found them in a nearby alleyway with several stab wounds, and they were both rushed to hospital. Despite the efforts of medical personnel, Holly died after suffering 36 injuries. She broke up with MacPhail 6 days before the attack. The boy, who cannot be named for legal reasons, received treatment and was later discharged. Officers swiftly arrested Logan MacPhail, then 16, at the scene after he was detained in a bus shelter by brave passers-by. When arrested by police, body cam footage shows how he identified himself and told arresting officers the name of his victim. He then said, in an apparent confession, "She was being too horrible to me." Speaking to an officer in the back of a police van, MacPhail later refused to tell officers his date of birth, saying, "I can't read or write. I know nothing."
Right, put your hands behind your back. Right, you're under arrest on suspicion of an assault. You do not have to say anything with me on your defence. You do not mention when questioned something that you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand? Yeah? Stand now. Where? In the alleyway.
By the way, do you want my card on the floor? Right there on the floor.
Have you got anything in your pockets?
My phone.
What's your name?
Logan MacPhail.
Logan.
Logan Shane MacPhail.
Who's the lass? Do you know her name?
Cody Newton.
Who?
Cody Newton.
Newton. Where's she from?
Colton. She's been too horrible to me, and that night was actually meant to kill myself. I was meant to kill myself. But I went too far.
What's your date of birth? You don't know. Stop being clever, right? You know how much bother you're in.
Right.
What's your date of birth?
Can't read or write.
Right. But you know what your day your birthday is?
No, I don't.
Huh?
I know nothing.
You don't know anything. You don't know what day your birthday is. How old are you?
16.
16. Where are you from? Where'd you live? Where'd you live?
After the attack, MacPhail was charged with taking Holly Newton's life and injuring another 16-year-old teenager. During police interviews, MacPhail displayed a chilling lack of emotion and admitted that he intended to kill Holly, reiterating that he did so because she was horrible to him. It took 18 months for the case to get to court because MacPhail's legal team had argued his learning difficulties and autism diagnosis made him unfit to plead. This would have meant he was unable to fully comprehend the criminal proceedings, but after hearing evidence from various experts, the judge ruled that he was capable of following the process. Throughout the trial, the defense team suggested that his various issues meant he did not understand the consequences of his actions, but jurors did not agree. Justice Hilliard told MacPhail, "You wanted to get Holly into the alleyway, which was out of sight, so you would have the best opportunity to attack her without anyone intervening. I am satisfied you had decided to attack Holly because you knew for sure, from her reactions at the bus stop, she was not open to any suggestion of resuming the relationship. You were filled with resentment and jealousy, but still able to calculate where you could best attack her, and you waited until you got that opportunity. You managed to persuade her to come a little further into the alleyway, waited until one passerby had gone on his way, and then took the knife out of your pocket and launched an attack on her which was vicious and brutal. The judge said Holly had knife injuries that were inflicted with severe force to her jaw, skull, backbone, and shoulder during the murder." Justice Hilliard added, Stabbing her head in that way was a terrible thing to do. Holly's mother was stopped from seeing her in the alley and ambulance because of the horrifying condition she was in. The force you used was so great that the knife broke and the blade was bent out of shape. The pathologist said seeing a knife so damaged was incredibly rare. I am sure you intended to kill her, and you knew how final death was. The judge said it is likely MacPhail had the knife with him that day to scare Holly by harming himself, and formed the intention to attack her when it became clear their relationship would not be resumed just before the killing. Justice Hilliard added, "She was entitled to break off the relationship if she wanted to, and spend time with whoever else she chose." Towards the end of his sentencing remarks, Mr. Justice Hilliard says he takes account of the fact the relationship with Holly was especially important to MacPhail against the background of his chaotic home life. Your speech impediment affected your ability to establish relationships and friendships with others, and so you set particular store by your relationship with her. The judge says, adding, "This made its ending all the more difficult for you to process and work through." He says MacPhail has also expressed remorse, yet still sought to blame Holly in some way. "It was clear in your evidence to the jury that you have persuaded yourself that Holly had treated you badly," the judge tells MacPhail, adding, "Your first reaction at the scene was to say that she had been horrible to you, and I think that this belief tempers or reduces somewhat the amount of remorse you feel." Before the verdict was announced, Holly's mother gave a heartbreaking statement in which she recounted the day she learned of what happened to Holly.
On Friday, the 27th of January, 2023, our lives changed forever. I kissed my 4 kids goodbye on their way to school, and one never came home. How can any parent begin to comprehend receiving a phone call from a stranger telling them that their daughter had been stabbed? Those words still play on repeat through my head as we raced to the scene with 2 of my kids in the car crying, frightened at what was unfolding. I could never have imagined what we would see. The worst things were running through our heads, but I never imagined how horrific the reality of the scene would be. The absolute trauma on my children's faces as they watched their sister being placed into an ambulance is something that will stay with them for the rest of their lives, and the full enormity of the situation cannot be put into words. I will never be able to erase from my mind that I was stopped from seeing my daughter in that alleyway or ambulance, seeing her eyes open or hearing her last words, her knowing that her mum was by her side. I couldn't even hug or touch her in hospital. My daughter was a crime scene, she was evidence. For me, this is a classic case of domestic abuse. The law states that I'm not allowed to call it that because of Holly's age, but I firmly believe that Logan thought if he couldn't have Holly, then no one could. He was obsessed with her. Holly's case has been labelled as knife crime, but making sure that people know the truth about her case is one of my goals. I firmly believe that teenagers should be taught about healthy relationships in schools and domestic abuse services offered at a younger age. Maybe then Holly would have recognised the red flags earlier and had access to other services that could have helped her. I don't want Holly to become another statistic. There is so much media coverage of how many women are killed each year by men. It almost normalises it for young men like Logan. Things have got to change.
MacPhail had admitted manslaughter but was convicted of murder as well as wounding with intent on the teenage boy. At trial, he said he wanted to return some of Holly's things, slippers, clothes, and teddy bears, but when he was arrested, he didn't have any of it with him. MacPhail was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 17 years and a further 5 years in prison for intentionally wounding another young man who tried to stop the attack. MacPhail was told even after he has served the minimum term, he will only be released when safe to do so. Speaking after the sentencing, Detective Darren Davies of Northumbria Police said it was a truly devastating case, with Holly's future cruelly taken away by MacPhail. Of course, nothing will ever reverse the tragic events of that evening, Detective Davies said, adding, "But I hope the result today will bring her loved ones a sense of closure so they can attempt to move forward." So many lives have been changed forever by the decisions he made that night, and now he will have plenty of time to think about that in his cell. We would urge everyone to look at the pain this incident has caused to so many people. and think twice before carrying a weapon of any kind.